Well, Leon Emirali is a communications advisor and former aide to a UK cabinet minister. He joins us live from Hertfordshire by Skype. So more than a quarter of Tory MPs voted against the government. Where does that leave Boris Johnson's position?
Well, good evening, Mariam. It leaves Boris Johnson in a fairly precarious position. It is, as you say, the largest rebellion since last December, when he only had 55 MPs rebel against him. We're nearly close to double that number of rebels. And the thing that will be worrying number 10 and the government whips the most is the breadth of the scale of this rebellion. We've got right-wing Tory MPs all the way through to Jeremy Corbyn on the left, and it just shows that there is a rebellion against the government across a lot of spectrums, a lot of different factions within the Tory party who voted against this. And I think it's going to be a fairly sleepless night for Boris Johnson and some of his team tonight.
The government's most senior public health advisor, Dr. Susan Hopkins, has warned of Omicron infections reaching 1 million a day by the end of December. So how will tonight's rebellion then affect the government's ability or willingness to impose further restrictions in the event of a public health emergency?
Well, I think the message that the rebels have sent is that they want the government to listen to them. I think there is a feeling amongst the Tory backbenchers that actually, with an 80-seat majority, Boris Johnson hasn't really been listening to them, and that is obviously going to then impact his thinking as we deal with this new Omicron variant. So I do think that there's going to be a change in tact. I think it's going to be a more collegiate approach to governing. And let's be honest, the majority of the Conservative MPs probably want to see less restrictions and more of an economic opening as we move towards Christmas and into the new year. So that could well have a factor on Boris Johnson's thinking. And then there's also the public at play who might see a prime minister whose authority is weakened amongst his own MPs. And also there is a conversation around whether or not Downing Street are abiding by their own rules, as we're seeing with the Christmas party story as well. So there's a lot of factors at play here, and I think we're going to see a slightly different approach from number 10 going forward.
When you say a different approach, you mean the Prime Minister is more likely to align himself with the COVID skeptic bit of the party?
I think that's more likely, Miriam, just because the scale of this rebellion seems to be falling predominantly in that faction of the party, in that wing of the party. So I think we're going to see slight more reluctance, perhaps, from the Prime Minister to be quite as trigger happy with going towards restrictions, going towards new measures to combat the Omicron variant. But ultimately, this is a government that have said from the very start of the pandemic they'll be led by the science, they'll be guided by the science, and I think the public want to see political ideology as far away from this as possible. We want to see the numbers. I think the public wants to be able to see that the data is driving this and the science is driving this. And I think Boris Johnson has to straddle that line very carefully. He needs to keep his MPs on board, but he also needs to listen to his expert advisors who are going to be guiding the public health response over the coming months.